Welcome to Beat Diabetes. I'm Dennis Pollock, and recently I did a video where I reviewed a documentary by Tortorich. Vinny Tortorich called Dirty Keto, and he just likes pure keto. He doesn't want any dirty keto. He doesn't want you to eat out at restaurants. He doesn't like anything you buy at the store that says keto on it. Make it at home and stay home, basically. He's a little too much of a purist for my like, but in covering some of the things he had to say, and a lot of it I agree with, it's not like I consider him a bitter foe at all. He seems like a nice guy, and he's one of us. He's a low carber. But, even we low carbers have our disputes and our disagreements. So here's one of mine. Now, one of the things that I didn't get a chance to go into on the last video I made about this, that I felt like I really needed to go into a little bit more, is the idea of net carbs. He doesn't like net carbs at all, and he basically mocks the whole idea. And he's not the only one. There's a number of low carbers that say, forget the net carbs concept. But here's what Vinny says. First of all, he says it was created just a few years ago. So he gives you the idea that, 4, 5, 6, 8 years ago, they created the concept of net carbs. He says industry decided if you take the fiber away that it's not going to affect your blood sugar. So you can just take the fiber away and you'll get the net carbs. First of all, as far as I know, that's just flat wrong. Industry didn't decide it, and it wasn't just a few years ago, and I'm going to show that in a minute. One of the words he uses that I really don't like is magically. He says, if you magically subtract the fiber grams, then you get the real amount of carbs that make a difference. So when you use the word magically like that, you're kind of mocking the whole idea that fiber carbs mean anything. Forget about fiber carbs, just go by total carbs, because magically somebody decided you take out the fiber carbs and you get the real amount of carbs you have to deal with. And then he goes on to say that's crazy and a fool's errand. Well, I guess I must be a fool, according to that definition, because I think net carbs do matter. Now, I will say this. Some people will argue, I go by net carbs, and others say, I don't go by net carbs. Well, to me, those kinds of statements don't relate exactly, because when someone says I go by net carbs, what they seem to be declaring is I have a limit to how many carbs I eat per day, like 50 per day, 30 per day, 20 per day, whatever your limit is. And that 30 or 20 or 50, whatever your carb limit is, you can decide I want to eat 30 net grams of carbs, or I'm just going to eat 30 total grams. That's just not me, because I've never had a limit of carbs. Never, ever had a daily carb limit. I have a spike limit. I don't want to see my glucose go over 130. And so, and I only eat a couple of meals per day, so I've got 2 chances to keep my glucose under 130, and I almost always do it. It works for me, and I end up with a A1C below 5 oftentimes. 4.9, 4.8 even, I've been that low. And I haven't achieved that by just saying I'll eat 30 grams of net carbs per day. Now, some people, they do that and it works. So I'm not saying don't you do it. Do it if you like. But when I talk about the effectiveness of net carbs, it's not like, well, I've got so many carbs per day. But I find net carbs can be useful to give me an idea of what may work for me. Notice the word may. What may work for me? So if I see a food has a lot of a lot of fiber, that is, and I can deduct it and get the net carbs low, I say to myself, that might work for me. But I never leave it at that. I always will test my blood sugar after it if I'm trying a new food or a new product of some kind to just see. Or maybe I shouldn't say always, but usually I do. But let's get back to the idea that this is a concept, this net carbs concept is something industry came up with, and it was just a few years ago. Number one, I don't think industry came up with it at all, and it wasn't just a few years ago. Here's a book that was written over 30 years ago, 1992, I believe it was, Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution. And although he doesn't use the term net carbs, he certainly has the idea of it. He says this: the fact that fiber is not converted to blood sugar makes for an interesting benefit for people doing Atkins, allowing you to sneak in a few extra carbs in the form of high fiber foods. And then a little bit later, he says you can deduct the grams of fiber from the food's total carb count. I call the net number of grams the carbs that count when you do Atkins. So he uses the word net, the net number of grams, but he says I call them the carbs that count when you do Atkins. Well, this was not just a few years ago. 30 some years ago, he was writing this. And if this is his newer book, he wrote a book in the 70s, late 70s. And if he included it in that, then we're not just talking 30 years ago, we're talking 50 years ago. This book, excellent book, written in the 90s as well. And this is by Michael and Mary Eads, called Protein Power, a terrible name for the book. And Dr. Eads even admits that, but his publisher demanded. And I know how that is. Publishers can very much decide what you're going to name your book. You'd like to think an author can name his book whatever he wants, but he can't. Anyway, it's a great book, even though Protein Power is not really what it's about. What it's really about is insulin and the fact that you want to keep your insulin low, and you do that by keeping your carbs low. But here's what Dr. Michael and Mary Eads have to say. Remember, you can subtract the fiber grams from the carbohydrate grams in commercial foods. Check the labels, which means you can eat more carbs. Well, exactly what Dr. Atkins had said. You can eat a few more carbs if those carbs are built-in fiber. And then later on in the book, not too far down the road, he says, remember, in calculating your carbohydrate intake for these foods, that the actual usable carbohydrate content of a given food is the total carbohydrate content minus the dietary fiber, what we call the effective carbohydrate content, or the ECC. So he calls it the effective carbohydrate content. Atkins calls it carbs that count. But they're basically saying the same thing, which is that carbs are a problem, but fiber carbs are not. And they just do almost nothing to raise blood sugar. Well, Benedict and I did a test. It's been in the last year or so, I think. And we ate 3 medium-sized avocados. Now, here's one of the ironic things. A lot of the nutritionists and the doctors that are really big into insisting that you should not count net carbs, you shouldn't pay any attention to net carbs, a lot of these same people will say avocados are good foods to eat. But if you don't believe that net carbs make any difference at all, or you don't believe that fiber grams of carbs make any difference, and they're going to raise your blood sugar just like all the other carbs, then the last thing in the world you'd want to eat is an avocado. Now, the USGA says that a whole avocado, and of course they come in different sizes, so I guess this would be a medium avocado, provides about 17 grams of carbs and over 13 grams of fiber. So if you forgot about the fiber and you say, well, I don't care about the fiber, I just go with the carbs, then you'd never eat an avocado, especially if you're on a really low carb diet. If you say, I don't want to eat more than 20 grams of carbs per day, give me an avocado, please. You just ate 17 out of your 20 with that one avocado. Now, a while back, Benedict and I did a test on not 1, not 2, but 3 medium-sized avocados. According to these numbers, that's 51 grams of carbs, more than a Coca-Cola, more than a Snickers candy bar, 51 grams of carbs by eating 3 avocados. If the net carbs means nothing, if fiber is going to raise your blood sugar just like any other carb, then our blood sugar should have jumped through the roof. Here's the results, in case you didn't get a chance to see that, of where our blood sugar went after eating not 1, not 2, but 3 medium-sized avocados, over 50 grams of carbs. Tell us what you got.
So for me, the pre-test was 106. Mm-hmm. And then after 1 hour, I was like 92. And after 2 hours, I was 93, which, is surprise. Like when you eat, your level supposed to be going up.
That's what people assume.
Right. But for this, it was really going down, which is like the food is not bad.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, we ate a lot. I mean,
I know.
we both said if this wasn't for diabetes, we wouldn't be eating this third one.
Yeah.
We might eat 2. We wouldn't eat 3. We were getting full.
Yeah.
So to eat that much and have it go down instead of up.
Yeah. It was great.
That's got to say something about the power of net carbs. Keep in mind, this is about as well. This is more than a candy bar in terms of pure carbs, but most of those are fiber. In my case, started out at 96 for the pretest. 1 hour after the meal, I scored a 92, identical with my wife. And 2 hours after the meal, I was at 96. So you beat me on that one, didn't you?
Beat him on that one.
Wow. Well, if that's not proof that fiber makes a difference and fiber doesn't raise blood sugar like normal carbs, if you can't buy that, I don't know what you would believe. But I sure believe it, and I've seen it again and again. Now, let me just share some foods. Here's flaxseed. A lot of people that want low carb, they'll eat flaxseed. They'll make muffins with flaxseed. They'll mix some in with some other type of low carb bread. It has in 2 tablespoons 4 grams of carbs, which isn't bad. But guess what? 4 grams of carbs is how much fiber it has. In other words, it's pure fiber. There's not a trace of carb other than fiber in here, which means that it really ought not to raise blood sugar at all. Now, here's golden flaxseed, which is really my preference. I think it's much tastier. It has the same exact numbers, 4 grams of carbs for 2 tablespoons, and all 4 of those grams of carbs are fiber. 4 minus 4 equals 0. This should not raise blood sugar at all. Guess what I found? It doesn't raise blood sugar for me. I mean, you can test yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. Make yourself a flaxseed muffin. And flaxseed by itself isn't quite the tastiest thing. There are better muffins, but still, go ahead and do it for science sake and for your own knowledge just to see about this whole net carb effect. Lupin flour. I love lupin tortillas. Now, they're not pure lupin. They also have almond flour. And in fact, they have a little more almond flour than lupin flour. But this lupin flour has 14 grams of carbs in a 1/3 cup. So that's actually quite a bit. But 12 grams of those 14 grams of carbs are fiber. I mean, it's almost pure fiber. And that's why you can make these almond flour / lupin flour tortillas, and I'll put a link in the description if you want to see our video on how to do it and how it works for us. It's not going to affect your blood sugar. At least it didn't mine. Again, test it for yourself. Here's another thing. A lot of low carbers and keto people talk about chia seed pudding, and I enjoy it here and there. I don't eat a lot of it, but occasionally I do. Chia seeds actually have quite a few carbs. They have 13 grams of carbs in 2.5 tablespoons. Well, that's quite a bit. But 10 of those grams are fiber. And that's why when I have a chia seed pudding, it does not raise my blood sugar. So, does net carbs count? Will the fiber carbs, is really what we're asking, will the fiber carbs raise your blood sugar? The answer is not much. Not much. Now, there's a big difference between these products because they're all pure. This is pure lupin flour. This is pure flaxseed. These are pure chia seeds. There's not 5 ingredients or 10 or 12 or 20. But when you buy keto bread, there are like 15, 20 different ingredients. And they don't have natural fiber. When you're eating those, and they'll say you can deduct the fiber and get the net carbs. The reality is the keto type breads have a manufactured fiber, not pure fiber like these foods do, which means they're definitely more problematic. Some of them work for me, some don't, but they're not the same as something that's just one ingredient. So lupin flour, I'm not afraid of at all. Chia seeds, they work for me. Flaxseed, perfect. Some of the keto breads with all their manufactured fiber, not so much. All right, let's wrap this up. Why is this important? Well, it's important for this reason. When you know you've got to go low carb to control and corral your blood sugar and your surging insulin, you're going to have to make some sacrifices. Let me say that again. Read my lips. You're going to have to make some sacrifices. And I'll make whatever sacrifice I need to keep my glucose down. Again, my big goal is low spikes after meals. But here's something about me. I'm not a martyr. I'm not looking to make more sacrifices than I need to. And the reason net carbs can make a difference is that you realize I can eat some foods I normally could not eat. If I really didn't consider net carbs to be a thing, I'd never eat an avocado. I'd never eat chia seed. I'd never have lupin flour, tortillas. There's a lot of things I would. Why should I make sacrifices I don't need to just because some guy doing a documentary tells me that net carbs is a stupid concept and makes fun of it? I will trust my blood sugar meter, my glucose meter, more than anything else. And so when people say, yeah, net carbs are a good idea, it's a bad idea, fiber doesn't count, yeah, fiber does count, I'm like, well, let me talk to Mike about that. Mike, the glucose meter. Let me see what he has to say. I found that when the product is pure lupin flour, pure flaxseed, pure chia seed, and they've got a lot of fiber, that almost certainly will work. If it's a manufactured fiber like you get on the grocery store shelves with the big words keto on it, and you look at the ingredients and there's 20 or so, that may not work. I'm not nearly so trusting of that. So there's my little rant on carbs, net carbs, and fiber. I think it's a useful concept, and I've eaten these things all through my journey of being low carb. It gives me a lot more options to eat, and I found with my glucose meter that this works. If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and you've just discovered this channel, let me recommend that you go to our uploads page, which will give you access to every diabetic video we've posted since we began. As you work your way through all our videos, I believe you'll find the help you need. A link to our uploads page is in the description.